On my way to pick up a client, I turned on the car navigation. A sweet, girly voice came through the speakers. Tee-hee-hee, your dearest sweetheart Lindsay is here to accompany you on your romantic getaway, just like an elopement. I slammed on the brakes, hitting my head on the steering wheel, while the girl's voice continued chirping. There's Lindsay's favorite cookie shop ahead, please buy me some. I froze upon hearing this navigation voice, immediately calling my husband to ask, have you driven the Porsche at home? On the other end, my husband Jackson calmly replied, my car broke down a few days ago, so I drove it briefly. Why? With a smile, I said it was nothing. After hanging up, I turned around and headed straight to Jackson White's company. 1. I rarely visit Jackson's company, understanding that trust is the bedrock of marriage. I didn't want to doubt Jackson, but that voice notification kept echoing in my mind. When I sat in Jackson's office demanding HR bring personnel files of all newly hired female staff, Jackson pushed open the door. Darling, Jackson sat across from me with an amused smile, conducting a surprise inspection. Found anything? If not, you'll owe me compensation. Jackson tapped the table absent-mindedly. I want you to go skydiving with me. Looking at Jackson's unguarded smile, I still wonder if I'm making too big a deal out of nothing. The personnel record showed no issues whatsoever, and there wasn't even a single new hire with the surname Miller. Maybe I really was overthinking and hypersensitive. I set the documents down and met Jackson's teasing grin with a resigned sigh. Just a routine check, I said, sliding the papers toward him. If you don't like it, I won't do it again. Jackson immediately softened, coaxing me with a smile. Darling, the fact that you care so much about me only makes me happy. How could I possibly dislike it? Jackson has always been gentle. Even when decisive and efficient outside, with me he remains like a child. Even when I make mistakes, he always apologizes first, ensuring I'm forever pampered by his love. I shouldn't have doubted Jackson. Following him home, I watched him carry groceries into the kitchen. As I turned toward the study to handle paperwork, I noticed his phone vibrating on the table. Just as I was about to call for him, my gaze caught the caller's name on the screen. My breath hitched. I picked up the phone and answered it. A familiar voice came through. It practically cooed at him. Jax. Lindsay's second-half performance relies entirely on this big deal of yours. The boss praised me today. I owe you big time. My heart clenched violently. I listened as the voice laughed and said, I heard about your wife's surprise check today. Jax, give me an update. How's the situation on your end now? The girl with the note, Lindsay from Silver Creek Winery, was calling my husband Jax. Even the company's founding veterans would address Jackson as Mr. White. No matter how close their relationship, no one dared speak to Jackson so casually. And now, the girl was still hesitating. Jax, why aren't you responding? Bad signal. The call ended abruptly. My face pale, I stared at Jackson, busy in the kitchen, and suddenly remembered, Jackson had indeed seemed to develop a love for wine tasting. Among the company's projects, there was suddenly a winery business that shouldn't have been part of the agenda. I remember asking Jackson back then why he had suddenly changed his business strategy. Jackson simply said, in any industry, wherever there's a market, I want a piece of the pie, then looked at me tenderly. I want my Ava to be the happiest woman alive, to have the best life possible. That sweetness I felt then now feels like a brutal slap across the face, shattering all my illusions and every expectation I had about marriage. Jackson, how far has he gone with her? 2. I sat in the study, Lindsay's voice flashing through my mind repeatedly. I remembered accompanying Jackson to that winery but never seeing a girl named Lindsay. I found my best friend's number and sent her a message. Help me check Silver Creek Winery and Jackson. Suppressing the panic in my heart, even my typing hands trembled. I need all of Jackson's bank transactions and recent itineraries. Tears welled up in my eyes as I stubbornly refused to let them fall, maintaining rationality. Jackson might be cheating. I had just clicked send when Jackson's voice came from behind me. Sweetheart, Jackson walked up to me with a guilty expression. There's a sudden problem with a company project, he said with an apologetic tone as he looked at me. I promise to spend time with you, but nobody else can resolve this. I have no choice but to go. He stroked my hair. I'll come back as soon as I'm done, he said, holding his phone with the screen still lit. I could see the typing bubbles in the chat window. Finally, I grasped his hand and asked, do you really have to go? Normally, Jackson would have sensed the emotion in my voice, caught the vulnerability hidden in my eyes, or noticed my phone screen still lit up. But he didn't. His focus was entirely on leaving and the messages on his phone, merely offering a patient explanation. I'll be back soon. Don't make a fuss. His tone grew anxious. Sweetheart, you've always been understanding. Don't make this difficult for me. Like a balloon suddenly deflated, I sat there frozen, watching Jackson rush off without even a goodbye. Tears finally spilled over as I cried silently, realizing then that indeed, there's no cat that doesn't steal fish. My best friend called me and told me, the Eansy Winery project was funded by Jackson himself, and he pushed hard for it. Any investigation would immediately reveal something fishy about this deal. My friend sent over some documents. Everyone at Eansy Winery is saying Jackson spared no expense to promote someone. The whole winery staff knows better than to joke about that girl now. My friend's voice turned cold. I heard Eansy Winery is throwing a celebration banquet at the Regent Hotel. Jackson isn't going, is he? The last shred of hope in my heart shattered completely. I looked at the dinner Jackson had prepared on the table, the peeled shrimp, my favorite sweet soup, and the roses placed beside them, when it suddenly hit me. Jackson had once said, "Darling, have you forgotten? Today is actually our wedding anniversary." Our wedding anniversary. Yet Jackson still chose someone else. He still decided to leave me here alone, even though I pleaded, "I don't want this. I don't want to let you go." But in the end, he walked away to the one who occupied his heart more. "I'm going to the Regent Hotel," I told my best friend. "Even if our marriage has reached its end, I need to know who I lost to." I actually thought about what kind of person I might lose to, whether it would be someone sophisticated and elegant, or perhaps a younger, sunnier, and more vivacious girl, but this possibility never crossed my mind. When I saw the girl sitting next to Jackson, coquettishly calling him Jax, so plain that I wouldn't even remember her if we passed on the street, lacking any poise, dressed ordinarily, her hair carelessly tied up, completely barefaced as she clung to Jackson's arm, laughing and calling out, "Jax, they're trying to make me drink," the girl boasted, spoiled by his favor, pointing at the bosses at the table. I told them my Jax is a knight who'll protect me, but they didn't believe me. "Now you have to come and talk to them yourself." In the private room, those people flattered with laughter. No wonder Lindsay has such a discerning eye. She doesn't pick often, but when she does, she lands herself a golden catch like this. 3. Mr. White spared no expense for Lindsay. Isn't the whole industry praising Mr. White for preferring beauty over power? Ha ha ha. Exactly. A pot-bellied man raised his glass. "Lindsay, why don't you join us in toasting Mr. White?" My steps froze, and my hand on the door stiffened. Jackson is allergic to alcohol and never drinks. Even during social events, I'm always the one stepping forward to cover for him. I stared at the glass on Jackson's table, listening to Lindsay coo, "I won't drink, our Jackson would never let me." "Is that so?" Lindsay cooed, clinging to Jackson's arm. To my surprise, Jackson actually picked up the wine glass, his gaze cool as it settled on the man. "Lindsay doesn't drink," he said. "Since we're toasting, why don't I drink with Mr. Peterson instead?" I watched as Jackson downed the glass in one go. The private room erupted in cheers, Lindsay blushing as she praised Jackson for being such a hero. Jackson responded by pinching her cheek with an indulgent smile. It felt like a rusted, blunt knife was carving grotesque and terrifying wounds across my body. I watched dark red blood well up from those wounds, watched myself become riddled with holes, still foolishly wondering if there might be some misunderstanding somewhere. My best friend steadied my wobbling figure and was about to storm in to confront Jackson. Jackson's mother is a complete bastard. I stopped my friend, took out my phone, and dialed Jackson's number. I still clung to hope, wanting Jackson to give me an explanation himself, wanting him to tell me if there was more to the story. I watched as Jackson picked up his phone from the table, his expression twisting as he glanced at Lindsay. Without hesitation, Lindsay pressed the end call button. Then, clinging to his arm, she reminded him, "You promised. You said." Lindsay bit her lip as she looked at him, "You'd stand up for me." Lindsay stared stubbornly at Jackson. I stubbornly kept redialing Jackson's number, watching the screen on the desk light up and dim and light up, until finally, Jackson made his decision. I agreed to you." After Jackson turned his phone face down on the desk, completely blocking my calls, Lindsay flashed a wide smile that became the final straw that broke me. I nearly lost my footing, but still managed to summon a shred of clarity from my grief to tell my best friend. "Surveillance footage." The surveillance, I pointed with trembling fingers at the camera above us. "Save it. I need evidence." I watched the surveillance footage in Jackson's gradually paling face, then told my best friend, "Since Jackson has made his choice, I won't let him get away with it." I got into my best friend's car, looking through all the documents she had gathered. Jackson was taking Lindsay out everywhere. In Lindsay's Instagram feed, it looked like a gigantic web weaving their love story, a story that never included me. I stared at the video Lindsay had recorded last month while sitting in my Porsche during my business trip. In the video, she beams with a radiant smile. "What should I do, everyone? My husband's car broke down, so he bought me a new one. It's a bit more feminine. I secretly prepared a surprise for him." She records a navigation voiceover, then puts a finger to her lips with a shoe expression, glancing at the camera. "Guess what?" she says. "Will my dear hubby like this surprise? Will he buy me cookies?" Suppressing the disgust in my heart, I continue scrolling, only to discover that on the day I was undergoing IVF at the hospital, Lindsay was at the same maternity hospital, holding a test report. Her face is flushed with coy delight. I haven't had my period for a month and a half. Guess what, followers? Is it just irregular menstruation? Or, she chuckled mischievously, am I getting upgraded to mommy status? I'm such a goddamn slut. My best friend was slapping the steering wheel in anger. But by then I'd already moved past the initial fury and heartbreak of betrayal. So I calmly told her, Jackson has oligospermia. For years, Jackson and I had been married with children being our shared unresolved issue. We'd consulted numerous doctors, yet every diagnosis came back the same, low sperm motility. Becoming parents would be a long, challenging journey. That's why I'd been undergoing IVF treatments all these years, just to fulfill Jackson's dream of fatherhood. Now, looking at Lindsay, I say, my husband promised that if I get pregnant, he'll reward me with a villa. Everyone, should I take cash or real estate? Instagram is filled with affectionate posts of Lindsay and Jackson's daily life, also meticulously documenting Jackson's expenditures for Lindsay, astonishing amounts I could never fathom. Even the distillery project was something all shareholders unanimously opposed, yet Jackson stubbornly pushed through. Just as I gathered these materials to confront Jackson, a call came in from the hospital. Turned out Jackson had suffered alcohol poisoning and was spotted by Mark, a friend I knew from college. Mark instinctively thought of me and hesitantly asked for help. Did you have a falling out with Jackson? Mark tactfully informed me. There was a girl constantly pleading through tears for us to save Jackson, I thought. I laughed and asked Mark if he could do me a favor. Then I saw Lindsay's Instagram update. Jackson lay pale within 4 drip, while Lindsay's eyes were red from crying. My husband drank so much for me, even though he knows he's allergic to alcohol. I love him so much. In the video, Jackson only shows one hand the entire time. If it weren't for those hands that held me every night, if it weren't for our lifelong friendship, if it weren't, how could I possibly believe Jackson would lie to me? I immediately liked Lindsay's post and commented, what a coincidence. This blogger's wedding ring looks exactly like mine. I posted a picture with the caption, my wedding ring was personally designed and custom made by my husband. Never thought my husband and this blogger's husband would have such similar taste. The comment quickly caused a stir, being pushed directly to the top as a trending comment, and Jackson's call came soon after. He weakly tried to explain to me in a frail tone, honey, I'm working overtime at the company and might not make it back tonight. Don't wait up for me, just go to sleep first. Don't make me worry. Jackson is still covering up, still hiding behind the pretense of caring for me, hoping I'll keep living under his deception. Listening to Jackson's voice, I watched as the comment section exploded. Many people dug through my Instagram and Lindsay's timeline, uncovering too many similarities, including the Porsche I specifically photographed. The comments section was entirely focused on debating whether 2 women were sharing one husband, or if one of them must inevitably be the mistress. I pretended to be shocked. That can't be right. My husband and I have been married for 7 or 8 years. How could I be the mistress? Feigning innocence, I responded to the voice on the phone, honey, someone called me a mistress. What do you think I should do? On the phone, Jackson remained silent for a long time, watching Lindsay in the hospital room passionately engaging with commenters while also trying to console me. Who said that about you? As soon as your husband is done, the first thing I'll do is settle the score with her. No need, hubby, I said with laughter in my voice, opening the hospital room door under Jackson's stunned expression. Since someone called me the other woman, of course I should clarify things, right, hubby? Holding up my live streaming phone camera, I aimed it at Jackson and Lindsay in the hospital room and announced, this is my husband. I feigned surprise and looked at Lindsay, what are you doing here? 5. Putting on an innocent face, I let the tears fall immediately. So you're the blogger I had that argument with. As if finally recognizing her, I then took out the photo Lindsay had taken of Jackson's hand and compared it to the real, living Jackson in the hospital room. So, your husband is my husband? So, I choked through sobs, Jackson, you've been hiding another woman from me. If you're her husband, then what am I? Actually, long before coming here, I had planned everything out with my best friend. All I had to do was pretend to be innocent while tearing off this facade. What I wanted was just for Jackson and that mistress to be ruined. Those who betray true love deserve to be scorned by everyone. But when I actually stood here, I couldn't even tell if my tears were real or fake, and even my accusatory words trembled slightly. Jackson, give me an explanation. The viewer count in the live stream skyrocketed. In just a few minutes, it surged from a few thousand to tens of thousands. Now there were already hundreds of thousands watching my live confrontation. Countless netizens flooding the stream were cursing Jackson as a scumbag, while others called Lindsay a shameless homewrecker destroying someone else's marriage. Jackson turned pale as he saw my tears, instinctively trying to get out of bed. "Darling," he said, disregarding the 4-needle in his hand as he yanked it out and struggled to rise. "Listen to me, don't cry." Jackson had always said he couldn't bear to see my tears. He whispered, "Ava, from now on I only want your tears to be from happiness, never from sorrow." Now, my tears were falling in big drops, and he was walking toward me barefoot. "Darling, don't cry." Lindsay had already grabbed his arm, telling him, "She's live streaming." Lindsay exposed the truth and started crying too. "If you acknowledge her identity, then what does that make me?" Lindsay held up her phone and opened my live stream. 700,000 people. A full 700,000, Lindsay cried, looking at Jackson. "If you leave, I'll become the homewrecker in the mouths of 700,000 people." Jackson froze mid-step, his face stiff as he stared at the still climbing viewer count on the live stream, then turned to me in disbelief. "Eva." He hadn't called me by my full name in so long. From our wedding day until now, he'd never used my name even at the office. He'd always called me darling. Now it's because Lindsay Miller called me by my full name and stood a few steps away, staring at me with an utterly unfamiliar gaze. "Did you do this on purpose?" Having been with Jackson for so long enough to read each other's thoughts with a single gesture or glance, he shielded Lindsay's face, his tone losing its former gentleness and turning frigid. "Turn off the stream first. We can talk this through properly if there's something." "Turn off the stream first," Jackson pointed at my phone. "Don't air your dirty laundry in public, Ava. Do you want the whole world to laugh at us?" 6. At this point, Jackson still cared only about saving face. Staring at the man I'd loved for years, I felt nothing but sorrow. I'd wasted my entire youth on someone like him. Suddenly, my tears stopped. I turned my icy gaze on Jackson. "If you were brave enough to betray me, why fear being exposed?" "Jackson," I wiped away my tears, "you can't wrap fire in paper. Today's consequences are the inevitable result of your own choices." I pointed the camera at Jackson. "From college graduation to now, supporting your entrepreneurial journey, just because you're allergic to alcohol, I stepped up at every business gathering where drinking was required. It's me who shielded you, trading my health for your current success." I willingly threw caution to the wind for the Jackson who once loved me deeply. But now, my gaze locked onto Jackson. "You're no longer worth it. I'm taking back everything I gave you." From the very beginning of our venture, we had signed agreements, all company shares, stock options, and ownership were actually under my name. My best friend laughed at me for being lovesick, but I confronted Jackson and made a scene. "Don't think I don't know what you're scheming. Making Eva the figurehead and CEO while you prepare to bail when trouble hits, leaving her holding the bag." Back then, I didn't understand why my best friend was so furious. I naively believed love could conquer all, that I could stand by Jackson no matter what, even if it meant draining every ounce of value from myself. Now, I slammed these documents against Jackson's chest, watching his face darken. "Jackson, your only choice is to sign these divorce papers." I produced the agreement, because before coming here, I've already secured every shareholder's vote to force you out. "Jackson, you're just a nominal director here. You should know your place." Jackson stared at the stock transfer agreement and divorce papers I presented, his face turning pale repeatedly. Still unwell from alcohol poisoning, the multiple shocks proved too much. He could no longer stand and collapsed onto the floor. "Ava," Jackson's voice was weak. "You'd planned this all along, hadn't you?" He raised his head to meet my gaze. "Planned to force me out. Lindsay and I were just decoys. In the end, you couldn't tolerate me surpassing you by too much, couldn't bear seeing me become superior. That's why you're so desperate to prove yourself, to make me regret it." I looked at Jackson, unable to comprehend how he could make such an association, but I was too tired to argue with him and simply replied coldly, "Sign it." My best friend threw the pen on the ground, but Lindsay was even more agitated than Jackson. "Ava, how dare you demand Jackson leave the company? Why are you forcing Jackson out? Who do you think you are? The company owes its success to Jackson, not you, Ava." "Jackson." Lindsay grabbed his hand and pleaded, "Don't sign it. Don't fall for her trap. She's doing this on purpose. She's trying to manipulate you into regretting it, regretting being with me." "Jackson, don't sign." I watched Jackson hesitate, then placed Lindsay's Instagram in front of him. "Jackson, if you still refuse to sign, I'll take you to court. You'll lose everything in the end." I tapped Lindsay's pregnancy test report on the screen, "And your child will end up with nothing, not even a name." Chapter 7. Jackson cared about the child more than I'd imagined. I watched him push Lindsay away before telling me. "I'll sign," he said coldly, "but don't you dare regret this. Ava, you'll regret this." To be honest, I've wondered if reaching this point with Jackson means I wasn't truly a good wife, or if there was something I lacked that made him seek someone else, causing the heart that once beat solely for me to split its rhythm between two people. But when I thoroughly examined Lindsay's social media, I realized it was never about my shortcomings. I never changed, rather, I'd never truly seen Jackson for who he was. Jackson proved unworthy of my unwavering devotion. I won't regret it, I told Jackson, holding the divorce papers. The word regret doesn't exist in Ava's dictionary. Including, the human heart is ultimately made of flesh, but when it came to a complete parting of ways, my heart still ached. I don't regret having loved you before. I grabbed my things and as we were leaving, my best friend was still cursing, scumbag man and cheap woman. I suggest you two stay locked together forever. Stop crawling out to ruin other people's lives. I followed my best friend as we left the hospital. Mark called out to stop me. Ava, he stepped in front of me, holding what I needed. It's all in there. He had been standing outside the ward the whole time, so naturally he witnessed everything. In the future, live well. Mark patted my shoulder. You deserve a better life. Yes, I deserve a better life. I shouldn't be afraid to keep moving forward just because I fell once. I nodded, took the things from Mark's hands, sincerely thanked him, then turned back to what I once thought was my home. As I finished packing my things and was about to leave with the moving company, I suddenly tripped over something. Looking down, I saw a pair of underwear that wasn't mine mixed in with my luggage. I picked up the underwear, staring at the dried, sticky discharge clinging to it. A wave of nausea surged through my stomach, nearly making me vomit. I had thought Jackson at least had some decency, that he hadn't brought Lindsay here to disgust me. Turns out, I had still underestimated him. On the day Jackson was discharged from the hospital, Lindsay followed him back to our marital home. He instinctively wanted to ask Lindsay to step aside, but the moment that thought crossed his mind, he found himself utterly ridiculous. Eva was already about to divorce him. Even the company's legal department had submitted their work handover to him. What more could he possibly hope for? But when it was time to actually go home, he still found an excuse to make Lindsay leave first. Using the pretext that I might still be at home, he coaxed Lindsay back to the apartment, then pushed open that door. Eva, his voice echoed through the empty living room, and a sense of desolation rose within him. He recalled the question their mutual friend had asked him during his hospital stay. Jackson, you're giving up Eva for a liquor salesperson? What are you aiming for? Can a drink sales job really compare to Ava's feelings for you? You'll regret this, Jackson. I'm telling you this as a brother. These words come from the heart. Don't forget where you came from just because life seems easier now. You and Ava have been through so much together. He listened patiently to his friend's attempts to persuade him, but the words stuck in his throat. I didn't want the divorce. It was Ava who pushed things this far, remained unspoken. He knew anything he said would only make things worse, so he chose silence. His silence eventually bored even his friend, who could only sigh and say, Ava can't stand the slightest flaw. This time, you've really. Finally, the friend hung up the phone. He silently looked at Lindsay, unable to understand why he had chosen this path. Perhaps it was because he had been with Ava for too long, so long that passion had completely faded into mundane familial affection. He thought love had vanished between us. He had only encountered Lindsay once at a social event, witnessing her being deliberately troubled. In that moment, Lindsay instinctively turned to him for help. It suddenly reminded him of our early entrepreneurial days. Back then, I too was pressured and forced to drink by business partners. At that time, he wanted to stand firm and reject the deal outright. But I firmly stopped him, forcing a smile as I said, I'll be all right. Don't be silly, I coaxed with a soothing tone. Securing this partnership is far too important for our company. My career ambition weighed heavily, so heavily that Jackson felt like mere greenery meant to accentuate my bloom. Everyone in the company sang praises to the remarkable Eva, the backbone of the entire firm who held it all together. He was forever eclipsed in my shadow, smothered completely, unable to emerge or be seen. Only Lindsay gazed at him with starry-eyed admiration. Jackson, you're amazing. The moment you step in, those old guys don't dare mess with me anymore. Joyfully, Lindsay threw herself into his arms. Jackson, you're my hero. It's my night. He lost his head and was overwhelmed with an inexplicable urge to protect. Sitting on the sofa, he gazed at the slightly worn couch, recalling how I had once bought it and patted the seat invitingly to gesture him over. Jax, come quick. I've had my eye on this for so long, imagining us curled up here watching movies together. A bitter smile tugged at his lips. The person who had stayed up late watching movies with him was gone now. Only belatedly did he realize that what he had thought was familial love was actually romantic love, a bond that had quietly grown into an indispensable part of his life, now towering like a mighty tree. Ava. He walked into the room and stared at the half-torn wedding photo, his own sunny smile now standing alone beside an empty space where someone once belonged. He leaned against the wardrobe when his hand suddenly brushed against something. Turning his head, he saw a dried lace panty, and something exploded in his mind again. Instinctively, he opened the wardrobe and saw all kinds of sexy lingerie and sleepwear Lindsay had left behind, alongside a USB drive. In disbelief, he opened his computer and plugged in the USB drive, only to see footage of me standing outside the private room, watching him defend Lindsay, playing her knight, watching as my best friend cursed loudly. I'm going in there to tear that bastard apart, only for me to stop her. I told my best friend, I still want to give us another chance. Tears streamed down my face as I confessed to my best friend. I promised Jackson I'd believe in him no matter what happened. My voice trembled, my expression betraying my lack of confidence. Maybe I was desperately hoping he'd answer that call. Maybe in that moment, I was still gambling, betting on which side his heart would ultimately sway toward. With shaking hands, Jackson stared at the surveillance footage, watching as he allowed Lindsay to hang up on me before murmuring with utterly indulgent affection, "All right, I'll stay with you today." He watched as I nearly lost my balance, steadied firmly by my best friend, then turned to the surveillance camera with reddened eyes and shouted, "The footage! Save the footage!" My best friend and I stepped away from the camera's view, breaking his heart as he watched. His hands trembled as he clicked to the next clip. It was in the hospital, where Mark told him, "Ava, did you and Jackson have a fallout?" 9. Suddenly, he remembered, that hospital had many acquaintances of mine. My dream had once been to study medicine, but because his family fell into hardship, because he was determined to start a business and make a comeback, I abandoned my dream and followed him into the finance industry. Now, he watched Mark glance towards the surveillance camera before telling me firmly, "Although it's against the rules, when my junior asks for my help, of course I'll help." Then, it was Mark who handed the surveillance footage to me. "Why must you go this far? People must learn to look forward," Mark said, while my eyes were still red and swollen from crying. I told him, "But there's no way Jackson wouldn't know about the grievances I've suffered." Yes, even when we first got together and he was at his most assertive, some people came to give me trouble. Unlike other girls who might hide it, I openly confronted him and told him about it. "Jackson, control your admirers. If they keep bothering me, I'll give them a taste of their own medicine." Remembering my temperament, a sudden smile touched the corners of his mouth, as if transported back all those years ago. Then finally in the video reel, he saw me sitting in the Porsche, listening to that navigation voice, his expression shifting wildly, even his hands trembling as he dialed my number. I comfort myself, even if it's true, I must forgive Jackson. It turns out I wasn't being completely open about everything. I too feared loss. What he saw in the end was a medical report, test results proving Lindsay was never pregnant at all, along with surveillance footage of Lindsay laughing with friends while sitting in the hospital corridor. If I hadn't claimed to be pregnant, I couldn't guarantee Jackson would come, nor could I be sure he'd invest money for me. Without his investment, how could someone like me with no education establish myself at Silver Creek Winery? Jackson's expression froze. Disbelieving, he dragged the progress bar back and forth, repeatedly pausing on footage showing Lindsay's flat stomach. Finally, he understood exactly why I'd called it revenge. Before Jackson could confront Lindsay, she had already sought him out because of the cyberbullying, pounding on his door and shouting, "Jax, it's me, open the door, Jax." Jackson flung open the door to find Lindsay weeping uncontrollably. "Have you seen what they're saying online?" She showed Jackson screenshots of the endless insults on her phone. "Because of Ava, now we're like rats crossing the street, everyone shouts at us. Jax, don't let Ava get away with this." Lindsay, quite ordinary looking, couldn't hold a candle to Ava. Lindsay, her figure was plain, couldn't compare to Ava. Jackson watched Lindsay cry, her deliberately affected baby voice still nowhere near Ava's. She fell short of Ava in every way. Why had he abandoned Ava, lost Ava, for someone like this? Jackson called Lindsay inside, slamming the surveillance footage in front of her. "Is this true?" Jackson's gaze was ice cold. "Tell me, is this true?" Lindsay stared at her own image in the footage, eyes suddenly widening as she tried to explain. A slap crashed across her face before she could speak, sending her sprawling to the floor, eyes reddening with tears. "Jackson, please listen to me, Jackson." 10. After I filed for divorce from Jackson, I immediately severed all ties with Silver Creek Winery. Back then, Jackson had abused his authority to push through Lindsay's investment project, only to discover halfway through that all the assets were worthless garbage. By the time I took the compensation money to Silver Creek Winery, the winery had become an empty shell. It turned out Silver Creek Winery was just a front, designed to fool idiots like Jackson. Lindsay was merely one of the many baits used for fishing. Only Jackson got utterly cleaned out. I smiled as I looked at the now empty distillery, while my best friend clicked her tongue disapprovingly from the boss's chair. Jackson ended up saddled with massive debt because of Lindsay. Who knows if he can even pay it back now. My best friend placed Lindsay's spending records from recent years in front of me. "You think if we sue Lindsay, she'll actually take responsibility?" I examined the bills, no longer feeling that heart-wrenching pain from before, just cold detachment. "Admit it you must, and admit it you shall." Before I could seek out Jackson, Jackson came looking for me. He had grown so gaunt, the shadow that once made my heart flutter had vanished, leaving only the weariness and desolation carved by society. He stumbled towards me, awkwardly calling my name. Eva. He pulled a ring from his pocket. Do you remember this? I stared at the ring, memories flooding back to my college graduation year when Jackson knelt on one knee during my commencement ceremony. Ava, he said, if there's any possibility in the future, please let me be your entire possibility. Jackson worked 3 jobs, barely sleeping. The dark circles beneath his eyes were proof of his love. He admitted, I was terrified someone might steal you away, so I couldn't wait to make us official. Please, he whispered, let me be the one who protects you. The ring glittered brilliantly. At our age, it's really not easy to come up with tens of thousands of dollars to buy a ring on your own. I was utterly moved by Jackson's absolute sincerity, even when my best friend rather rudely remarked, it's just a cheap ring, and you think you can buy Ava's life with it? Jackson, aren't you dreaming a bit too big? Watching Jackson's face turn ashen, I was instead provoked into accepting the ring. I told him, I'm not afraid of having nothing, I'm only afraid of genuine feelings being betrayed. That day, Jackson held me so tight, lifting me off the ground as he spun around. In the end, Jackson's tears fell onto the nape of my neck. He said, Ava, I won't let you regret this. Now, the ring remains in our marital home, marking our complete end. Yet Jackson says, when I first met Lindsay, I just thought she reminded me of you back then. I wanted to protect her, as if by protecting her I could protect the you who once charged forward for me. I know I was wrong. Jackson's eyes turned red. Ava, you're the only one I've ever truly loved in my life. I'm not asking you to come back, Jackson said. I just want to be like you, even if it means swallowing my pride, even if it breaks my heart. I still have to tell you, Ava, I really do love you. I understood. Jackson's remorse might be belated, or perhaps, drowning in financial struggles. He suddenly realized my worth was higher after all. I knew I shouldn't spoil such a dramatic moment, but I felt possessed by my best friend's spirit as I slammed the exorbitant bill onto him. Love or no love, doesn't matter. Jackson, I pointed at the numbers on the bill. This is what you need to take responsibility for. Understood? When Jackson, Lindsay, and I met again, it was as plaintiff and defendants. I represented the corporation in suing them for embezzling company funds, with Lindsay additionally accused of fraud. On the day Jackson and Lindsay were sentenced, I felt as though a weight had been lifted, as if I'd truly closed the door on the past for good. The end.